DynaNotes student course notes are first and foremost a reference for students so they can be successful with whatever curriculum the teacher is using. And of course, the notes are also a study aid for the student, as well as a way for teachers to organize a pre-test review. But they can be much more than that. What I want to do now is go ahead and provide 3 different activities that you can do with your students again and again that take advantage of having these wonderful resources in your classroom. The 3 activities are a color cube, a folded paper project, and finally the create your own activity. So let's look at the color cube first. The color cube gives you a way to take a deep dive on a single topic. And that topic could be any number of things. On our website, we have recommendations for how you can use the color cube. So on our website, in DynaNotes.com, you'll find this cube that we have under Cool Stuff. And the reason I'm going to the website to show you that product is there's some ideas on how to use the 6 faces available there. So let's say you have a concept or a vocabulary term. One of the faces could be the term and definition. A second could be an example related to that term. The third could be similarity to other concepts, then differences with other concepts, then why it's important, and finally some type of model or graphic representation. You can see how this could be used in science, social studies, mathematics, or even language arts. For a formula or equation, you would of course provide the formula, an equation, and the definition of each variable. You could give a verbal description of the formula, provide an example problem, another example problem, and show how it was used historically and how that information is used currently, which would require a little bit of research. For a process or cycle, you could number the steps after you name the process or cycle and show some sort of graphic as well as the phrases to describe the step. Let's say you're trying to cover an event, legislation, or movement. You might put on the 6 faces what, who, when, where, why are the causes, and then the outcomes. What if it's a leader? Who? What is their background? What is their list of accomplishments? Give a helpful, detailed example that demonstrates the information described. And finally, describe why the person is important and give some sort of graphic representation. Here's another concept for how to cover a time period. All of this information is available for free, but I don't think most teachers will have much problem on any given topic deciding what 6 aspects of a topic that they would like the student to look at. This kind of deep dive is going to require some research. So here's a couple hints though, because this is pretty simple to think about, but it is nice to have a few do's and don'ts before you go. One is to encourage the students to title each of the squares before they get going. So this is a person, this is who, George Washington, and the student has begun to write a quote, his birth and death date on the first panel. And for the background, they did the cherries and put a myth we love, and then they are going to describe George Washington's childhood and life before he became the commander of the Revolutionary Army. So this is an example of how you can get your students going. You want them, of course, to pick their own example, but in this case, this is just could be that the student chose the winner at Valley Forge. So this is how you get going, and then when you do cut the cube out and tape it together, you'll find that every side, the green tab meets the green color. So it's pretty straightforward how to tape it all together very nicely. But of course, the very last flap, it's of course hard to tape inside there or to put any pressure on it for gluing. So you might just end up with a little piece of tape on the outside. But by the time you've done your work, when it's flat and are able to turn it into a cube, you could then roll the cube in a square, in a group of students, and the students could present whatever face lands face up to the group and describe what they learned about that person, place, event, or how they used an example for slope or whatever it is that they're doing. So that's a 6-sided color cube. It's kind of like a flashcard on steroids, because instead of 2 things or 1 thing, you're going to look at it 6 ways. But that's a neat resource, and no matter how bad someone's handwriting is, there's something that's going to be a little bit visually attractive about this colorful cube. So that's kind of nice. The next activity I'd like to talk about is the folded paper project. This is one that can be used again and again and again. The simpler that a folded paper project is, the better. You really want the students to do the design, not the teacher. So if we're too prescriptive about exactly where everything goes and exactly how everything should be folded and done, then we end up reducing the learning and making the project more and more about the artwork. Now, of course, the student can do something as complex as they wish, but for the learning to take place, we don't think most folded paper projects need to be much more complex than this. As an example, all the student has to do is fold the sheet of paper so that it comes short of the bottom, leaving enough space for the student to write the title of their folded paper project. The Progressive Amendments. Now, we should not have to tell the students how many flaps to cut in a folded paper project titled the Progressive Amendments. They should be able to find this section of content in their DynaNotes, see that there are 4, and cut their project flaps into 4. It's always fun to have the students choose a different color for every flap. So the 16th and all the description and examples of importance that the student might want to include should also be in the same blue color. So setting up the folded paper project is relatively straightforward for the student to do. They can look in their DynaNotes to see that the 16th Amendment was the power for Congress to assess an income tax, and it lowered the United States' reliance on tariffs in order to raise money to run the federal government. This description could be placed on the top part of the flap or the bottom part, and then an example could be placed in the other portion based on what the teacher wants the students to do. Perhaps the teacher would like the students to give a specific example in history that shows how life was different in America before and after the passage of the 16th Amendment, before and after the passage of the 17th Amendment, and so forth. And surely it doesn't matter. We could have defined the 16th Amendment here and written 16th right here, and defined 17th here and written the numeral 17th right here. So, you know, exactly how it's laid out doesn't matter. And as long as the students are learning and the analogous information is being placed in the same areas, then you've got yourself a great and sensible and logical folded paper project. So this type of folded paper project, it could be used for the foreign policies of the first 5 presidents. It could be used for the 3 types of elements, metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. It could be used for the different types of slope, positive, negative, 0, and undefined. The different parts of a plot. Any set of related information can be represented in a folded paper project as simple as this. And the student can be the leader of the design and be the winner in terms of maximizing their learnings. The last thing I'm going to talk about is a favorite. It's called Create Your Own. And basically the assignment is very simple. As you wrap up topics and you move through a section of DynaNotes content, you assign the students to create their own set of student course notes for themselves to represent all of the information that is in the DynaNotes. But if the DynaNotes uses a table, they may not. If the DynaNotes shows a bulleted list, they may not. They have to come up with a different way to represent the same information. For example, with a web, with a diagram. So this is a wide open activity where all you need is paper and some type of markers or crayons and the DynaNotes section. And in order to grade that work, the teacher simply needs to ask, is all the information represented in a correct way? And are the examples unique? If we use a carbon atom in the DynaNotes, then the student should not use a carbon atom as an example. So that's the assignment, and I just want to show you an example of completed student work. So this is relationships among organisms. And organisms has been defined as a living thing, which are divided into producers who make food and consumers who get food. And the student has created an illustration in which the producers include the bush, the grass, the tree, and the consumers include the birds, the butterflies, the tick, the cat, and the snake. Further, the student has drawn an illustration that demonstrates commensalism. The bird benefits from the nesting site provided by the tree, and there's little effect on the tree. We have predation, where both the snake and the cat are trying to feed upon the baby bird. We also have competition, because the snake and the cat are competing for the same food source. We could have also identified competition between the tree and the grass for the sunlight. Parasitism, there's a tick biting the poor dog. The tick benefits food as well as a nesting site or shelter, while the dog is harmed. And finally, mutualism, both the butterfly, who's gaining a food source, and the bush, who's benefiting from pollination, are benefiting from their interaction with each other. And then the student also has the sun showing, which of course drives everything that's taking place with these organisms. So this is the create your own activity, and you can imagine that by the end of the year, the student would have a set of notes that are very specific to themselves, but cover all of the eligible TEKs in a creative and colorful way. I hope you enjoyed learning about the basic use of the DynaNotes student course notes as a reference throughout the year and as a study aid before tests. I also hope that our examples of student-designed projects that can be used and assigned again and again, which are creative, fun, challenging, rigorous, but also easy to assign, easy to grade, and a lot easier to get started on with the DynaNotes, have been helpful to you. Whether you're taking a deep dive looking at 6 aspects of a topic, or whether you're looking at a related information set that could be represented in a folded paper project, and finally, whether you're synthesizing generally related information by summarizing an entire section of content of the DynaNotes into a create your own image, diagram, or graphic. That you have found something in this video to help you implement DynaNotes successfully and get the most out of your investment. Be sure to hold on to your DynaNotes. Remember, they can be used for years until the TEKs change. Thank you for watching.